Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I was 2 steps into the ballroom when I saw him, 17 years older, same pressed collar, same permanent scowl. My father, sitting at one of the front tables like he owned the place. He didn't even stand when I walked in, just turned halfway, gave me that side-eye look and muttered under his breath, "No one would have invited you if it wasn't for pity." I didn't flinch. I didn't roll my eyes. I just kept walking. I already knew what was coming. My brother Ryan and his bride had gone full fairy tale for this wedding. White roses, candles everywhere, orchestra in the corner. It looked expensive. Everyone dressed to impress. And then there was me, in a sleek black dress with a scar on my collarbone and steel in my spine. People watched me like I was either the black sheep or some weird celebrity. I was both, technically. Quick note. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I found my seat near the back, far enough not to be noticed but close enough to hear. I hadn't seen my dad since I left home at 17. I knew Ryan wanted me there, but I also knew this was going to stir the pot. I just didn't care anymore. Dinner rolled out, followed by awkward toasts, champagne, and small talk. I kept to myself. Then, just before the first dance, the bride stood up and took the microphone. Her voice was soft at first, but steady. "Before we start the dancing," she said, "we want to take a moment to honor someone very important to us. Someone who has served this country with distinction, someone we are incredibly proud to have here today." I froze mid-sip. I didn't like surprises. "Please rise," she said, "and help me honor Director Parker." People stood, chairs scraped back, glasses clinked. The applause started slow, then built like thunder. I stayed seated for a second, taking it in. Then I stood. No bow, no smile. Just straight up. I didn't need the attention, but I wasn't about to shrink from it either. My father stayed seated. I saw his jaw clench, his hands balled into fists on his knees. Everyone else stood for me. He didn't. Good. I didn't come for him anyway. After the applause faded and the music picked up, I sat back down with that old weight pressing down on my chest. That moment at the wedding wasn't the first time he stayed seated. It started a long time ago, in our house on the edge of York, Pennsylvania. He was a factory man to the bone. Ran our house like it was a damn assembly line. Wake up at 6, eat by 7, silence by 8. You didn't speak at the table unless you were asked a direct question. And if he was watching the news, you shut the hell up. He worked 30 years as a plant supervisor at the Ditech factory, and he brought that same structure home like it was religion. We didn't have dinners. We had briefings. We didn't have chores. We had posted assignments. Mine were always the same. Sweep the floor, clean the kitchen, and keep Ryan out of trouble. Ryan. He was the golden boy. If I was a line item on Dad's clipboard, Ryan was the production goal. He got the stories, how Dad once saved a whole shipment by catching a bad valve. He got the toolboxes, the batting gloves, the late-night trips to the yard to toss a ball. I got help your mother. I got don't touch that. I got invisible. He had this phrase he'd use when I'd ask questions. Stay in your lane. Every damn time. When I was 10, I told him I wanted to design engines someday. I had just finished reading this book from the school library about jet turbines. I was buzzing. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd be impressed. He didn't even look up from the paper. Just grunted. That's not for girls. No discussion, no smile, not even an insult. Just dismissal. And I didn't cry. I learned early tears didn't move him. They just gave him something to mock. So I watched. And I learned. While Ryan got taken to the garage to learn with his hands, I'd sneak in after lights out and flip through the shop manuals. I read about torque specs, combustion cycles, gear ratios, anything I could find. I used to sketch engine diagrams in the margins of my notebooks and hide them under my mattress. My mom once caught me copying part schematics from a catalog I stole out of the recycling bin. She looked down at the page, then back at me, and whispered, "Don't let him see that." That was her way. Quiet protection, never defiance. She lived on the edge of his temper and thought that was survival. Once, I caught her fixing the belt drive on the dryer. She knew things. She just never said them out loud. Ryan tried sometimes. When he was little, he'd bring me nuts and bolts from the garage and say, "Here, so you don't get bored." But even he learned fast. Dad didn't like me getting too curious. So I stopped asking. I just started doing it in secret. I found an old junk carburetor at a yard sale and spent 2 months cleaning it up and taking it apart piece by piece in my closet, using a screwdriver I smuggled out of Dad's toolbox. When he asked where it went, I lied and said Ryan lost it. I kept my mouth shut, did my chores, and waited. Every, you're not cut out for that. Every, that's not for girls. Every slam door. It didn't break me. It sharpened me. He thought he was building structure. What he really built was a wall, one I was already figuring out how to climb. By 17, I knew I wasn't going to survive in that house much longer. I had done everything behind the scenes. Kept my grades perfect, aced the SATs, built a portfolio so sharp it could cut glass. I applied to every engineering school that didn't have his fingerprints on it. Got accepted into one of the top programs in the country. Full ride, mechanical engineering, West Coast. The letter came in a thick envelope. I didn't wait. I walked straight into the living room and handed it to him. He didn't open it. He already knew. He just reached over, picked up a navy blue folder from the end table, and held it out to me like it was a lunch order. Pick one. I looked inside. Beauty school, HR certificate, nursing program, all local, all filled out, with my name typed neatly at the top. Do something useful, he said. My jaw tightened, but I didn't say a damn thing. Not one word. I took the folder, set it on the coffee table, and walked upstairs. I packed a duffel bag, 2 pairs of jeans, 4 shirts, some cash I'd saved from under the mattress, and my sketchbook. That's it. I didn't even take a jacket. My heart was pounding, but my hands didn't shake. Downstairs, I heard the TV turn up louder. That was his way of pretending I wasn't real. When I reached the front door, my mom was already standing at the bottom of the stairs, robe tied too tight, eyes rimmed red. Please don't, she whispered. You know how he is. I paused, just for a second. Then I shook my head. Yeah, I said. I do. She didn't try to stop me. She just started crying. Quiet, like she always did. I stepped past her. Halfway out, I looked up. Ryan stood at the top of the staircase, hands on the railing, frozen. I waited, thinking maybe he'd say something. Anything. He didn't. I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. The first night, I crashed at a classmate's place, Melissa from Trig. She lived in a double wide with 3 siblings and a mother who smoked through dinner, but they had space on the floor. That was enough. I picked up overnight shifts at the BP off Route 30. Cleaned bathrooms, restocked chips, changed coffee filters. I'd walk there at 10, get off at 6, shower at the school gym, and show up to class like I hadn't just scrubbed puke off the tile 2 hours ago. Every time I thought about quitting, I remembered his voice. Pick one. Do something useful. I was already doing something useful. I was building a life without him in it. Melissa's mom let me stay 3 weeks before her landlord got wind. After that, I bounced between couches, slept in my car once or twice, and kept working the night shift like it was the only thing tethering me to earth. My teachers noticed something was off. One asked if everything was okay at home. I told her, depends how you define home. Eventually, I found a shared apartment near the campus with 2 girls who didn't ask questions. They just needed help with rent, and I paid on time. That was enough. There were nights I woke up shaking, not from nightmares, but from cold sweat and hunger. Nights I sat in the laundry room eating saltines and staring at the wall because the idea of going back, of choosing useful, burned hotter than any stove. He had power over me for 17 years. Then one night, in the dark, on a borrowed pillow, I realized he didn't anymore. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need his pride. I just needed to outlast him. And I was already doing that. I made it to campus with 2 suitcases, 0 connections, and a jaw set tight enough to crack. From day one, I was broke, exhausted, and completely out of place. It wasn't just the school, it was the culture. 90% male, most of them raised by engineers or coming from prep academies. Half of them wore lab coats like they were born into it. I was the girl in thrift store jeans and steel-toe boots who smelled like coffee half the time and gas fumes the other. I signed up for the earliest classes I could get, then picked up every available shift at a 24-hour diner a couple blocks from campus. I'd wake up at 4, cram in 2 hours of reading, then haul myself to class, eyes half glued open, notebooks full of grease smudges. Nobody held my hand. No care packages showed up. No "we miss you" calls. My parents didn't ask where I'd gone. They didn't ask at all. And the guys, they looked at me like I was temporary. One of them, Evan, slick hair, daddy's money, all talk, smirked across the lab table one day and said, "You'll drop out by midterms." I didn't respond. I just ran the numbers on our fluid dynamics project and caught a pressure miscalculation his genius brain had missed. I beat the curve. Again and again. Test after test, I ranked in the top 10%, then top 5. They still didn't want to partner with me. So I stopped asking. I worked alone. Let the results speak louder than I ever could. I ate a lot of ramen, slept a lot less than I should have, missed parties, skipped breaks, couldn't afford textbooks some semesters, borrowed, scanned, did what I had to. But every night, I came home to that little room with the flickering desk lamp and that printed email pinned right above my drawer. It was from Ryan, only one line. Dad says you'll quit. I hope you don't. That hit harder than anything else. Not because of Dad, screw him, but because Ryan still had one foot in each world, and I didn't know where he actually stood. I stared at that email more times than I could count, especially when I hit burnout, when I failed my first thermodynamics quiz, when I got chewed out by a TA for using the wrong unit conversion, when my hands were shaking from too much caffeine and not enough food, and the numbers on the page started to blur. I kept pushing anyway, not for pride, for proof. Because every time I walked into that lecture hall and sat down next to guys who didn't want me there, I thought about that living room back home, about that man with his folders and his blank stare, about my mother standing on the stairs crying into her robe, about every stay in your lane. And I thought, not this time. Graduation came fast. I crossed that stage at 23, top 5 in my class, and I didn't hear cheers from the crowd, but I didn't expect to. I wasn't there for them. I was there to cash in every damn hour I'd bled into the grind. 2 weeks later, I signed on with a major defense contractor. High clearance, classified tech, team leadership out the gate. They threw me into a project developing modular weapons platforms, gave me a team of 8 engineers, all older, all male, all skeptical. They called me Miss Calculator behind my back. Thought I didn't hear it. One of them, Russo, wouldn't even make eye contact when I gave briefings. Would just lean back in his chair and nod slow, like he was humoring me. I didn't waste time fighting egos. I knew how to earn respect. I'd been doing it since I was 10. The tension broke during a field test out in Arizona. We had a prototype running full voltage, new thermal-guided targeting relay, sensitive as hell. Mid-run, the core circuit overloaded and kicked the whole system into shutdown. Everyone froze, alarms screaming, sweat starting to pour. Russo looked at me like I was gonna panic, like this was the part where the girl in charge fell apart. I didn't. I grabbed the diagnostic pad, bypassed the default lockout, and dropped to the base console, pulled the back panel, rewired the thermal dampeners manually, and brought the relay temp down before it could fry the whole core. 5 minutes, system saved, test salvaged. When I stood up, my hands were covered in soot and my knuckles were bleeding. Nobody said anything, but they looked at me different after that, not with warmth, with respect. They stopped second-guessing. They started taking notes. They started coming to me before going to the manager. Not because I demanded it, because I'd earned it. We rolled out 3 successful tests that quarter. My design mod shaved 20% off energy consumption. HQ noticed. The first bonus check hit my account, and for some reason that night, I called home. I don't know what I expected. Maybe just to prove it, to say, see, I made it anyway. The line rang. No answer. I didn't leave a message. What was I going to say? Hey, it worked out, even without you? Pointless. I sat there on the edge of my twin mattress in that dusty rental and stared at the silent phone. Then I got up, threw on a hoodie, and went back to the lab, because silence wasn't new, but neither was the work. I didn't chase titles. I just kept showing up, doing the work, and outlasting people. So when they asked me to oversee a mobile lab deployment near a live testing range overseas, I didn't hesitate. No fancy office, no safe buffer zone. Just a trailer full of volatile equipment, a 6-person crew, and a launch pad a few clicks away that felt more like a war zone than a test site. I liked it that way. We ran ops tight, gear checks daily, live simulations every other night, sleep when you could. The crew was sharp, but green. Most had never worked outside a domestic facility. Then the storm hit. It was late afternoon. Wind started to scream through the compound. The satellite uplink went first, just blinked out. Then the radios dropped. And then, through the static, one of the tower feeds cut mid-sentence. That was the only warning we got before the ground shook. The south tower, where our auxiliary fuel units were stored, went up like a damn grenade. Steel and fire. 1 second it was there, the next it wasn't. I didn't think. I moved. Ran straight into the smoke while people screamed behind me to wait for backup. But backup wasn't coming. Not with comms down and wind slicing sideways like razors. I found two techs on the ground about 30 feet from the blast radius. One was limp, the other was trying to crawl, blood pouring from his leg like a faucet. I grabbed the first and hauled him under the side railing of the ruined bay. Then I yanked off my overshirt, wrapped the other's thigh tight, and tied it off with one of our signal straps. Smoke burned my eyes, chemicals stung my throat, but I didn't stop. The fire was creeping toward the generator line. I kicked on the emergency override, dragged both of them 10 feet farther, and radioed through the backup channel, coughing so hard I could barely speak. Evac needed. South Bay. 2 down, moving north. The line clicked once. That was all I got. That was enough. The evac van rolled in 5 minutes later. They tried to load me on a stretcher. I waved them off and climbed in on my own. My shirt was soaked, some of it theirs, some of it mine. I didn't check where the cuts were. Didn't care. All I wanted was to get my people out and make sure the rest of the compound didn't go up next. Back at base, a junior tech handed me a bottle of water with both hands shaking. "You good?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said. And I was. Mostly. Word spread faster than flames. By morning, they were calling me cold start. Said I moved like the system had already booted. No hesitation, no fear. I didn't argue. When the dust settled, I had a new scar across my left side. 6 inches, stitched ugly. Didn't bother me. I'd earned worse. What stuck with me wasn't the pain. It was the silence after. That moment when everything stopped burning and I realized, again, that if I didn't act, nobody else would. That's what leadership is. Not permission, not a title. Just stepping in while everyone else freezes. After that explosion, the promotions came fast. I got bumped up to systems lead, then senior project engineer, and finally director of critical weapons development. Top clearance, multi-agency, 7-digit budget oversight. My badge could open doors most people didn't even know existed. I signed NDAs thicker than the Bible and worked on tech they'll deny existed for the next 20 years. Still, I kept trying to tell him. Every few months, I'd send an update. Short email, no fluff. Sometimes a photo from a secure-approved ceremony. Once, I mailed a newspaper clipping of me getting a National Defense Award. Had to go through clearance just to send it. No reply, not even a return to sender. Eventually, I heard from one of his old coworkers, some retired maintenance guy who still played cards with him on Tuesdays, that he'd taken that clipping and thrown it in the trash without reading it. Said, "I don't need to know what she's pretending to be now." That hit harder than it should have. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stopped sending things. I already knew who he was. Then one day, Ryan called. He didn't text, didn't email. He called me directly, first time in years. "Hey," he said, "I'm getting married." I smiled without meaning to. "You found someone who can put up with you?" "Barely," he laughed. "Listen, I want you there, but I gotta tell you up front. He doesn't." I sat back, staring at the wall, phone still pressed to my ear. Ryan kept talking. "I told him this isn't his call, but I won't lie. He's pissed. Said it'll ruin the day." "Then why risk it?" I asked. "Because you're my sister, and I want you there." I hadn't seen him since the night I left. Just that frozen silhouette at the top of the stairs, and now he was choosing me anyway. I didn't even pause. "I'll be there." This time, I wasn't showing up with my head down or my back bent. I wasn't coming to prove anything. I wasn't coming to fight or make a scene. I was coming because Ryan asked, and because I had nothing to hide anymore. Let him clench his jaw, let him grit his teeth, let him stew in his seat while the world moved on around him. He didn't have to stand for me. The rest would. The ceremony was held at a country estate just outside Gettysburg. Clean lawn, white chairs, string quartet under a white tent that probably cost more than my first year of college. I arrived 20 minutes early, on purpose. I didn't want the walk of shame through rows of turned heads. If they were going to stare, let him do it while I was already sitting down. He was 2 rows ahead of me. Same squared shoulders, same starched collar. Hair grayer, frame smaller. But the stance hadn't changed. Still sitting like he was running the whole show. His wife, my mom, sat next to him with her hands folded so tight her knuckles were white. I didn't say a word to either of them. Didn't need to. During the vows, I caught him glancing back once. Just a flicker, like he wanted to make sure I hadn't vanished. When he saw I was still there, he turned back and muttered under his breath, "No one would have invited you if it wasn't for pity." I sipped my wine and waited. Didn't look at him, didn't react. I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction. After the kiss, the photos, and the awkward parade of relatives who couldn't remember if I was the runaway kid or the famous one, we moved into the reception hall. Long banquet tables, candles everywhere, full formal dinner. I kept my hands folded in my lap until the bread rolls hit the table. He didn't speak to me again, just sat 2 rows up, center of attention in his own mind. The man still thought the room rotated around him. And then, right before the dancing started, the music cut. The bride stood and took the mic. "Before we begin," she said, "there's someone here tonight I'd like to recognize." People glanced around. I stiffened. Ryan stood beside her, hand on her back. "She's not one to ask for recognition," the bride said, "but she's earned it more than anyone I know. For her service, for her leadership, for her integrity." I felt my throat tighten. The stem of my wine glass dug into my fingers. She's faced things most of us couldn't imagine. And she's done it with strength, with purpose, and without ever asking for applause. My father didn't move. "Please rise," she said, voice clear and steady, "and join me in honoring Director Parker." My name echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Chairs scraped, shoes shuffled. Dozens of people, friends, strangers, relatives I hadn't seen since high school, all stood. Applause filled the room. Loud, earnest. I didn't stand right away. Let it sit. I watched my father out of the corner of my eye, still seated, face pale, fists clenched on the table like he was holding himself down. Good. I stood slowly, straight, no bow, no wave, just a small nod to the room. That was enough. The clapping grew louder. People leaned in to get a better look. A few even wiped their eyes. Ryan smiled at me across the room, eyes glassy but proud. My father stayed seated. He didn't speak, didn't clap, didn't look back. He sat there alone while the whole room stood for me. And I let him. A few weeks after the wedding, a plain white envelope showed up at my apartment. No return address, just my name, written in blocky, all-caps handwriting I hadn't seen in almost 2 decades. I stood there in my kitchen holding it, thumb hovering over the edge. I knew it was from him. Inside was one page, lined notebook paper, written in blue ink, pressed too hard like he was trying to control every letter. No greeting. No sign-off. Just this. "I didn't stand because I didn't know how. You've become more than I ever allowed myself to believe." That was it. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just stood there holding the paper, still as a damn statue. I folded it once, slid it back into the envelope, and put it in the drawer with Ryan's old email. A few days later, Ryan called. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Somewhere not charged?" "Charged," I repeated. "You know what I mean." He was right. We couldn't do it at his place or mine, and the thought of meeting at Dad's house made my skin crawl. So I picked somewhere that wasn't about either of us. "Our mother's grave," I said. "Saturday." He didn't argue. It was overcast that day. Cold wind, no rain. I got there first, stood under a tree near the back edge of the cemetery where the grass was still patchy from winter. The headstone was simple. Her name, her dates, nothing extra. That was her style. He showed up 10 minutes late, walking slow, hands in his jacket pockets. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not just physically, something about him had softened. Less tension in the jaw, less fire behind the eyes, just tired. He stopped a few feet away. Didn't reach out, just nodded. "Thanks for coming," he said. "You asked." I wanted to explain some things. I let him. He talked about growing up under Dad's shadow, about how he used to hear them argue when I wasn't around, about how he didn't know what to do when I left. Said he was scared, said it felt easier to stay silent than to pick a side. "I didn't get it back then," he admitted. "I barely get it now. But I'm trying." I didn't hand him forgiveness. I wasn't there to make peace, but I listened. That was more than I ever got from the man who raised us. We stood there for a while, quiet, just the wind and a couple birds picking at the ground near the next plot over. Then, right before he turned to leave, Ryan straightened up, brought his right hand to his temple, and gave me a small salute. Not military, not stiff, just 2 fingers, held for a second, then dropped. Like a man trying to own what he should have done a long time ago, I returned it. Not for him, for me. After that day at the cemetery, I didn't hear from Ryan much, and I didn't expect to. I kept moving. New roles, bigger projects, higher stakes. I led teams across 3 continents, sat in rooms with generals and physicists, signed off on things I couldn't talk about even if I wanted to. But I stopped chasing his approval. That part of the fight was over. One afternoon, in a hangar bay outside San Diego, a young engineer fresh out of school caught up to me after a system review. She looked nervous, notebook clutched tight to her chest. "Can I ask you something?" she said. I nodded. "What was the hardest part for you?" Like, all of it, I didn't have to think long. "Silence," I told her. Growing up in it, living through it, getting used to the idea that I wasn't going to hear what I needed. She looked confused. "So how'd you deal with it?" "It taught me how to speak." That landed. She nodded, but slowly, like she wasn't sure what that meant yet. I kept going. "Respect isn't inherited. It's built, earned, brick by damn brick." She smiled, half relieved, half inspired. I'd seen that look before. "My family didn't stand for me," I said, "but others did. My crew, my teams, the people who followed my lead when everything was falling apart." She opened her notebook like she wanted to write that down. I tapped the edge. "Don't quote me. Just remember it." She nodded again. "Every tech who thanked me, every contractor who had my back, every time someone trusted my word over protocol, that was the real proof. Not a man clapping in a church pew. Not a letter after a lifetime of silence. That applause at the wedding? It was never about who I'd been to him. It was about who I'd become without him." I told her one last thing before she walked off. "When the world claps for you someday, don't wait to see who stands. Just know you earned it. The only permission you need is your own."